Science as inquiry is where students are provided with opportunities to take an investigative approach, investigate a problem, find possible solutions, make observations, ask questions, experiment with ideas, and think creatively. Students are able to approach science more as it is in the real world when we approach science in the classroom with inquiry and allow them to really dive deep to find the solutions to the problems that they're being faced with in their day-to-day lesson plans. In the classroom, it looks a little bit different. Here are some quotes I have taken from peer-reviewed articles. As noted in the NSTA position statement, early childhood science education, children have the capacity to engage in scientific practices and develop understanding at a conceptual level. And early in their science education, they need opportunities to observe phenomena, engage in problem solving, and provide explanations of their thinking. Over time and through multiple and varied experiences, children develop skills in scientific discourse. This is really proving and showing that allowing students to be able to be very hands-on in their learning is beneficial to them their in their acquisition of science information and learning the subject as a whole. In the second article, a quote that I've taken is, in elementary school, it is often true that the sciences are, from a curriculum importance standpoint, treated as tertiary at best. This frustrating situation is exacerbated by the standardization of curricula and the advent of high stakes testing. If it is not directly related to improving that test score, it is all too often treated as disposable. But I believe that the fundamental skills which are taught in the process of scientific inquiry, asking questions one is curious or passionate about, researching and examining the evidence that exists, thinking deeply about the origins of what you read and see, and discovering knowledge and beauty that you never knew were there, are not only fun and fascinating in their own right, but they form the bedrock of all analytical thought. This is also going back to proving that students really need to be hands-on with their scientific learning, and the classroom really needs to offer opportunities for that. Why is science inquiry important to the field? As we viewed in the TED Talks, it allows students to learn more readily and effectively about their science topics. It introduces new ways of thinking so that they do not fail and they don't fall discouraged. They realize that research is not a straight pathway from A to B, but they can often go from A to C or A to D, and eventually they will get to that B point. But it is very rarely just from A to B, straight shot, question leads to an answer. Science inquiry is also important to the field because it finds new minds and voices to speak out about topics. By using a more unconventional approach, it allows students to progressively learn more and more about science through investigation and through their own personal experiences and hands-on projects. And it challenges students by engaging them into the lessons and really holding them and their attention. It also prioritizes investigation, which is at the root the true purpose of science. Resources available to learn more about science inquiry would be the National Science Teaching Association. There are really good resources on science.org, and then something that could also be done is sending home small family activities that the parents can experience with their children, small little experiments that they can do as homework, and it will allow the parents to experience what they should be experiencing in the classroom. An example of science inquiry would be a unit of living things. What do they need to survive? So we would introduce the items needed for this project, which would be a clear glass container, washed gravel, pond water, water plants, water snails, soil, small rocks, grass seed, and small plants, and then earthworms, land snails, or other bugs and small land animals that eat plants. So this will allow the students and groups to create a water and a land environment where they will place in a well-lit area with these items that they've needed for the project. They'll cover the lid with plastic wrap and they'll observe it. They'll see what do those living things in that environment need to survive. They'll be able to take notes, observe from day to day or even throughout the day and see what those living things are eating, what is contributing to their survival, and they're really able to explore by building their own environments for them, and they're able to observe and find answers to their questions. I thought that this was a pretty good example of science inquiry that was in the textbook that I was viewing lesson plans from. A non-science inquiry lesson that I found in that same unit of living things would be how do populations interact. It was basically a lesson plan activity that was around flashcards. You'll string together sunlight, plant cards, and then link plant eaters to plants and animals. You'll link the animals to the plant cards and then link the meat eaters to the plant eaters and so on and so forth. So then they'll be posed with a question, if fire destroys half of the plant cards you have, you need to rearrange your food chain. Without them being able to really dive in and explore, how are they going to be able to truly come to the recognition of this is why this happens? I think to be able to make this a really good inquiry lesson is to take the flashcards away completely and make an online activity, like a virtual activity where they're able to create a virtual ecosystem, and they would be able to then see the effects of that ecosystem. They'll be actually creating things, not just using flashcards that you've given them, and they'll be able to go through and explore the way the food chain works and how those populations interact with one another. I created 2 labs for my own classroom in the future, and the first one I created was a 5 senses lab, which I will be able to engage the students in the beginning by asking what are the senses and really explaining them, what they are, how the students experience them, and then I'll allow the students to explore each each sense in their groups. So there will be a touch station, hearing station, smell station, sight station, and taste station. At these stations, there will be different things like rocks or feathers to feel, coins and baby rattles to listen to, like if you drop them or shake them, soaked cotton balls, flowers, or foods to smell, a magnifying glass, shapes, colors, pictures to look at, and then different foods to taste. These are going to allow the students to explore their own senses, and then we'll explain how they've used their 5 senses and elaborate with prompts that relate it to a living things unit, like how do animals use their senses to find food, how do animals use their senses to stay safe, things like that. And we'll evaluate with a Kahoot or clicker quiz in the classroom at the end as an assessment. Another lab I created was a traits lab, which would be a genetics lab. To engage students in the lesson, I would show a family photo and ask them to discuss with their seat partner what do they notice about the family. And then at each station or each table, which will be a station, will have different photos of animals in a baggie that would be like disassembled family animal photos. They will have the ability to work together to match the animals to their family. And while they do this, they'll be expected to be taking note to identify differences and similarities between the parents and the babies in their notebook. We'll go on to explain that the students have recorded differences and similarities between animals and show an educational video about genetic traits after that. That we would use from Edpuzzle, which will stop, pause, and have questions for the students to answer. We'll elaborate by asking the students to revisit that family photo and point out traits that each child got from each parent. And then we will evaluate with an exit slip asking what are some traits that you have gotten from each of your parents. And here are my resources for this project.